Hi, I'm Gordene McKenzie,
I'm Nancy Nangeroni.
and this is GenderVision.
Lots of people making big bucks. You and me, babe, I see we're out of love. Well, I heard a voice from a high above. It don't cost a thing just to be in love. We don't have anything but love.
Hi, thank you for joining us and welcome to another GenderVision. We've got a great program for you tonight, or today I should say. I always want to say night. Anyway,
You're
Gordene,
just a vampire, Nancy.
that's what it is. A fabulous one today.
A mermaid.
And so you want to tell folks what we're going to be chatting about?
We're going to talk about queer theater and the politics of drag, and our focus is going to be on drag queens. In the future, we're going to do a show specifically on drag kings. And our guests are Abe Rybeck, who is the founder of Theater Offensive, which is
right.
New England's leading queer theater, and Eugene Tan, who is a drag artist and the community engagement director at the Theater Offensive. And today, Eugene is going to be joining us as Becca DeBus.
Love that. There's nothing like drag names. And so let's see. Do you want to tell us a little bit? Well, I guess we should say why we're done up.
We have dresses on.
Yes.
And shoes. I have big shoes, big silver shoes.
Can we pull back and get a picture of Gordene's shoes? Somebody got that? All right.
That makes me 6 feet
Yes.
tall, which is
My shoes are
is
nothing
lovely.
fancy, but we're definitely here. Throw up your shoe again.
I throw up my
There we
shoe. It's
go.
a big silver,
It is a big-
silver
Anyway.
shoe. Anyway,
This is our feeble attempt to do drag. But
we definitely aren't pros.
it's fun
but
dressing
we thought
up.
we'd just
It's
dress
fun.
up.
Little kids know that it's fun, and sometimes adults forget that. And that's one thing that drag is wonderful for. It reminds us all to laugh. Somebody once said the difference between a drag queen and a cross-dresser is a cross-dresser has to be taught how to have fun while cross-dressing, whereas drag queens do it naturally.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. And the reason we're dressed like this, as Nancy was saying, is it's in honor of Theater Offensive's 20th anniversary and also the 40th anniversary of Stonewall, which we'll be talking about in just a bit.
Yeah.
And if we think about drag history, just a short overview, there are always males that played women in theater because women weren't allowed in theater if we go back to Shakespeare time and other times. But drag itself evolved as a form of wit and camp to combat the horrible malicious stereotypes and bigotry that people had, particularly in the 1950s in the U.S. toward gays and lesbians. And so it became a way to kind of dress up and take that wit and kind of throw it back. And there's different kinds of drags. There's glam drag, there's political drag, as
So it's
we'll see.
very much a satirical thing.
Yeah, it can be. It
Satir-
can be. Now, glam drag may not be as satirical. It could be used that way, but certainly political drag has really had a place in the gay and lesbian rights movement.
All right.
Very important.
So the theme of today's show, I guess, in a sense, is everyone matters. And speaking of which, and before we go to our guests, I want to introduce to you a videotape that, or a new video production. And this is made in support of the legislation here in Massachusetts, an act relative to gender-based discrimination and hate crimes, legislation that's now pending that would make it illegal to discriminate against people on the basis of gender identity and expression. So we've got this 10-minute piece, Everyone Matters. This is all about transgender civil rights. So we're going to show you this now, and then we'll be back with Abe Rybeck. So here it is, Everyone Matters.
I try to be like the old people in my community. No matter how many abuses that people told me they had experienced, there was always something very alive and beautiful in them that I remember.
Arriving at the place I am today is the right place for me. That I struggled for a majority of my life with gender dysphoria, and the only right thing to do was to transition. I work at Microsoft in the Microsoft Business Division. So when a new version of Office comes out, I'm one of the people who actually makes this stuff work.
I'm an anthropologist. I teach undergraduate and graduate university courses. It was important to me to finally be recognized for who I am, and I think that my relationships are more meaningful now. They've learned to respect me as the man that I am. Yes.
A person obviously being comfortable within themselves and not having to fight within themselves can actually be a lot better member of society and contribute a lot more. Now I am a firefighter EMT on the Danvers Fire Department. This May will mark my 12th year.
My gender identity is not a limitation, and it's added to my experience, my life experience, and in many ways it's made me a more compassionate person. So when I graduated, I took work in human and social services. When I first started working, I wasn't actually out as trans. Mostly I was worried that I would have negative repercussions from my supervisors. If they had fired me, they would essentially have been getting rid of one of their good counselors, which is very hard to fill those positions.
In general, I think people want to do the right thing. I think people want to have compassion. But I think we need to have laws when that kind of good judgment breaks down.
We know that people not just feel vulnerable, but they are vulnerable. And there's not clear and explicit language that lets everyone know that transgender people are covered by the laws. And so one of the importance of passing non-discrimination laws is to send a strong message about the dignity and the safety of transgender people's lives. One of the big issues is that transgender people are widely unemployed and vastly underemployed. And what I'm always left thinking about is the fact that there's a loss. There's a loss for the person who faced discrimination, but there's also a loss to that workplace.
When I would get calls, I would speak to the recruiters and I would say, it's very important that you understand that I plan on coming to this company as a woman and I'll interview that way, even though all of my prior experience as a man. It was only one company that went beyond that first recruiter call. I was brought into Microsoft on an acquisition from Groove Networks. I checked the diversity policy and it was right there that gender identity and gender expression were explicitly named. I have 3 patent cubes sitting on my desk right now that I'm really proud of, and I don't think any of those patents would have been issued if I lost my job. You know, that's my own invention. And I think every morning when I go into work, I'm particularly proud that I made the journey, the company supported me, and I'm repaying that. You want to perform when your company tells you that you're important to them.
My captain is extremely supportive. He says, you're my friend before, you're still my friend now. He said, just don't mind me though if the first time I see you, dressed as a woman in a store, I sit there and go, ah! And I turn around and I said, well, don't be surprised if the first time I see you seeing me, I go, ah! So we both had a good laugh over that. The minute you step onto the fire ground, the minute you go on the job, all personal stuff gets left behind and you start working as a unit and as a team, and that's what counts. We got the call, it was early in the morning, and no sooner the alarm came in when the explosion happened. I mean, it knocked paintings off the wall, pictures off the wall at the station, everything else. As soon as we pulled out onto the ramp, we looked up, we could see the big mushroom cloud of flame and smoke. I mean, the houses were totally blown apart, debris everywhere. and you just fall back on your training and do what you need to do. But I was able to prove to myself, it's like, yeah, I could still do the job. That, you know, even though I'm a trans woman, that's not the issue here.
Every time you have to face any sort of bureaucratic or paperwork, anything, you have to sit back and wonder, is it worth my time to even do that? For something maybe even as simple as going to the doctor.
About 15 years ago, I was told by doctors that I should have my knees replaced, and I haven't done it yet. Even if my doctor is accepting and non-transphobic, I don't know who I may run into in the hospital who is transphobic. Could be a nurse, could be a janitor, you know, it could be anybody who could cause me harm in a moment when I'm the most physically vulnerable. The idea that you could be damaged more on the operating table is something that I have to think about.
When an individual is targeted for violence because of their identity, that targets not just that individual, but an entire community. To have a transgender person who's violently attacked sends a message to the rest of the community that you are not safe.
You know, the stress that I experience when I go out on a date with my lady, you know, in a public place, it might go fine and it might not. So you just got to know that. Yeah.
When you've heard rumors about people being beaten, when you've heard rumors about people being in car accidents and being denied medical help just because someone's trans, it's frightening. It's kind of hard to believe that we can treat each other this way.
We're not wrong. Everyone matters. All of us matter. And all of us have different experiences to bring to society, to community. And that's what makes the world a richer place to be in.
I have a 9-year-old daughter, almost 9 and a half. God, she's getting big. She said to me one night, driving home, when I was taking her home, she said, "You know, Dana, you're the one who taught me how to sing." And she just said, "Well, you've just been so brave. And whenever I get embarrassed, I just think about everything you've gone through. And singing is easy." And I just went, wow. Now, if that's not having a good impact on your children, then I don't know what is.
One of the high points in my life was when my father died, and on his deathbed, after years of struggling with my gender identity, he said, "Enoch, you are a good man." And so that's when I knew that I was okay.
What I think is behind a lot of the resistance is some vague sense of discomfort, and it's discomfort about the unknown.
What I do know is that it hurts my heart to see so many trans people get a job and somebody finds out that they're trans, and then they eradicate them because they can give the job to somebody who doesn't disturb them.
There's no place in the law for me to point to and personally know that I'm protected from discrimination. We're always worried of what's going to happen to us, whereas if we had that explicit protection, I think a lot of us would feel included.
We can do it. We can get statewide non-discrimination laws passed, we can get a federal bill passed, and we're all strengthened by having gone through that journey to get to the ultimate place where there's comprehensive protections.
Okay, I hope that all our viewers will agree that transgender lives matter. And maybe if we're lucky, by the time you see this here in Massachusetts we'll have that legislation passed. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, we have our guest. You want to do the honors,
I really
Gordene?
hope so. I'm pleased to do it. We're honored to have Abe Rybeck here with us today. And Abe is the founding artistic director of the Theater Offensive in Boston, New England's leading creator of diverse queer performance. Abe is also the creator of AIDS Activist Theater and the True Colors Out youth theater troupe, which performs in community centers and in schools. Abe is also the co-author of the book to Melissa Lee's recent hit musical, Surviving the Nyan, about a lesbian going home from Boston to Hong Kong to celebrate 15 days of the Chinese New Year. Abe and Melissa were awarded the 2007 Jonathan Larson Musical Theater Award for the book, and Abe has received numerous awards, and we would be here all during the show if I read all of the awards, but I'm going to just share a few. National Foundation for Jewish Culture Fellowship in Playwriting, AIDS Action Committee Community Award, Cambridge Peace and Justice Award, Greater Boston Business Council Award for Individual Excellence, and one more, Independent Reviewers of New England Special Citation for Theater, and so many more.
Abe, thank you so much for joining us on GenderVision. We're so
Thank
thrilled
you for
to have
having
you.
me here. I'm a big fan. So
well,
I've been
and
a fan of
back at
Nancy's
ya.
work for
Oh,
a
yes.
couple decades.
I don't know that I've been working that long, but yeah,
13. I love that.
you knew about it before I did.
The rumors were out. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, it's so great, yeah. I mean, Abe and I obviously have known each other a while. And
You were both Pride Marshals, weren't you?
We were Pride Marshals together.
there's a story there.
There is a story.
Abe had this fabulous
I guess what we call it a
outfit.
collar. It was like a pink triangle collar, except it was 6 feet high. And we were sitting in the back of a limo together, waving to the crowd. And every time I turned to wave, I bonked Nancy in the head with my collar.
I'm like, this parade marshal gig isn't so good.
But the funny thing is also that day, I was wearing this earring had
Which is
a match
lovely.
to it. I was wearing this precious, I love these, designed by Larry Verba,
Oh,
a dear
gorgeous.
friend of mine. And I remember once I was waving to someone in the crowd and I felt the earring go and I looked down and I saw it fall into a crack in the car and I've never gotten it back. And New Year's Day the following year, my friend Orlando Del Valle gave me a picture of me from Pride. He had snapped a picture of me waving at him from the car, and you can see the earring mid-air falling into the crack.
Isn't that great?
He happened to
amazing.
snap
I love
the
it.
picture right as it was happening.
Amazing.
Now, astute GenderVision viewers might remember our Pride program. If you watch the very end
That's
of our
right,
Pride
that's
program,
right.
you will see, as we're saying goodbye, you'll see my earring drop off and you'll see me catch it.
There's
The
something
advantage of
about
having
pride.
been an athlete as a young kid.
That's the problem, is that I wasn't as agile as you were.
So tell us about where you came from, Abe, and how you got around to founding the Theater Offensive.
Well, literally where I came from, I'm from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Grew up there, and I the first time I ever saw a drag queen was in West Virginia at
In West Virginia?
at a sleazy bar there, and I
Were you out as gay at the time, or did you know you were gay at the time?
yeah, I
Okay.
did, and
I guess West Virginia would be a pretty difficult place to be out as gay.
I'm sure it has its challenges everywhere, and
Yeah.
a really cool person in West Virginia, a folklorist, has done a great study on the challenges and benefits of coming out in Appalachia, where I'm from.
interesting.
So,
Cool.
for instance, the storytelling tradition
Yeah.
there kind of gives people a frame for saying, "This is who I am. This is me, my
Cool.
story." Also, another strength is that there's just a feistiness and a kind of a independent spirit of people in the mountains,
Which is certainly
I-
what you
I
bring to
agree.
your work.
and that lends itself.
So
yeah.
you saw a drag performance in a bar.
I did, and then also I came to Massachusetts. I saw I was in the airport. I was on my way to New Bedford to visit my sister who was working there. And in the Boston airport, the Cape Air terminal, I saw this magnificent creature walk in and sit down right near us. And my mother went, that, whispering in my ear, that is a female impersonator. And I just remember thinking, oh, she doesn't, how would she know?
There's something mythical, I think, about the first moment that we see drag queens. I was 15 years old, and I went on a trip with my dad to New York. And when we got to New York, he did it with each of his daughters when they were 15. We got to pick what we wanted to do. And I said, I want to go to Greenwich Village. So I went to Greenwich Village, and I went into an underground club.
Precocious
And
things.
yeah, 15. I wasn't supposed to be there. There was alcohol. The thugs were playing. And
oh my God,
all
this is
the
great.
servers were queens. And I just remember when she came up to me, and she was gorgeous. And she said to me, she said, what will you have, honey? And then shortly after that, I was escorted out of. But
because you were too young.
I was just stunned. I just thought it was. I mean, they ranked right up with the fabulous cowgirls I knew in New Mexico.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you were talking about the roots of drag and the history of drag, and I think that you were talking about it in terms of theater, but I think it's important to remember that it comes out of people's everyday lives.
Oh, that's lovely.
And it's there is a recorded history of kind of drag in theater, and I thought that you're speaking about the impact that Stonewall had and the repression of the 50s is really true. But I think that it's an everyday response that people have to the constrictions of gender norms, and also to just the desire to make a scene and to kind of stir things up. And I think that was definitely true for me. I was not a performer. I was not a drag queen at all. And in the early 80s, as the wars were raging in Central America and racism was as bad a problem as ever in Boston, and our friends, my friends, were dropping like flies from AIDS.
Yes.
A group of friends of mine, we all got a group of us together that started doing political activism, and I quit my full-time job and was, doing telemarketing on the side so that I could support the political work that I was doing on the streets. But frankly, I thought what we were doing, even though we were so passionate about it, looked really boring to everybody else. And I just thought, that's a crime. These things that we feel are so important, and yet when we try to communicate with other people about them, we do it in such a boring way. And one night before a demonstration, when we were going to be doing civil disobedience, which I think, that was my first drag name, Sybil. Sybil
Oh, that's awesome.
So, I was going to be doing civil disobedience.
Yes.
And I just thought, oh God, we're going to sit there and chant, arrest us, arrest us, arrest us, till they arrest us. And then we're going to chant, let us go, let us go, let us go.
Yeah,
I just thought, and I just wrote a little sketch that involved some drag, and we handed that out among our friends and sat there with the scripts in our hands and basically kind of mops on our heads kind of drag,
I love it.
and put on a show.
Good for you.
Smart.
And it was life-changing.
You did guerrilla theater.
We did guerrilla theater, and I noticed that for the first time, it was in front of the JFK building in Government Center, and the secretaries walking out of the building were just walking by us like, oh, whatever, as always. And then they heard what was happening, and they saw what was happening, and they turned, and what is that? They did a double take, and I thought,
excellent.
that split second, that moment of their lives was mine. They were actually paying attention. They gave a hoot about what I was saying.
Yeah.
And began my journey. And I think that drag was really important because it was playful.
Yes.
And I think that the playfulness is an important ingredient in drag. It's a way of trying to explore tough issues like, in this case, it was the war in Central America, in Nicaragua at the time, with playfulness.
That's right.
Yeah, and playfulness can play such a strong role in activism because it's disarming.
Yeah.
I know that in the early days of the transgender movement, Rick Ann Wilkins brought a sense of playfulness, and we all sort of recognized that that was a good thing. And so, we'd have the transsexual menace demos, and we'd make it fun.
That was such great stuff.
And so then, how'd you get from there to theater offensive? Sorry.
Well, that's a great question. Our group, when we were doing that, was called United Fruit Company.
I love the name.
And we performed on the streets for years. It got kind of chilly,
Oh, yeah.
And it was a couple years before we ever performed under a roof or charged anyone or anything like that. But then we started also, aside from doing these shows on the streets, we started also doing shows in theaters.
You were writing songs too.
Yeah,
then.
I was
You were writing
writing
songs
for
too?
it, and
Cool.
we wrote songs and sketches and little one-act plays, things like that, and we put them together in a review called "I Am What I Wear," and that was our first show. And out of the United Fruit Company, after several years, about 5 years, I think, in 1989, 20 years ago, began the theater offensive.
20 years ago.
20 years ago. And the reason I think that we wanted to start the theater offensive was that we wanted to have a broader coalition of people doing this work. So United Fruit Company was a gay men's troupe. And we wanted to be working with women a lot more too, and a lot broader. It was a diverse group of gay men, but we wanted to open it up more.
And on that note, we're going to have to stop because we're out of time. Can you believe it? But we're going to be back, part 2. We'll do a part 2 to this program, and we invite you to rejoin us for part 2 of GenderVision on queer theater and drag queens and the politics of drag.
And
When
we'll
is-
have
when is
Abe
part
and
one
Becca
gonna air?
DeBus.
When is part 1 going to air? We'll be airing in early May.
Okay, great. I can't
All right.
wait.
So thanks so much for being with us. And remember,
You can always stretch your gender vision.
bye everybody.